There is more death in Final Fantasy 2 than any Final Fantasy game I've played so far. And only 13 and 5 are left, man. This is a massacre. An absolute massacre. Oh, God. I came into our next big play session of FF2 expecting that Chadley was going to be the penultimate boss to face down the Emperor. But it felt we were getting to the end game. That really wasn't true. It's interesting. Because of this, like, weird leveling system where you can equip new weapons and then you have to re-level them, and spells, you have to re-level them. It creates a weird dynamic where if you just play the game normally and you kind of like, oh, this is my barb or whatever, and we do a little bit of spell leveling like we've done in the past few episodes, then you're just insanely overpowered. Like, there's no getting away from it. And today, my friends, we're going to break our golden rule for the first time. The first time in any of the Final Fantasy games that we've played so far. So let's get into it. My mission was clear. I needed to somehow find the Dragoon, speak to the Wyverns, do all that kind of stuff. So I went on my journey to find the magic pendant that allows me to speak to the Wyverns. I explored this cave for about an hour. I killed the last boss. I just got to a lake where I couldn't do anything. And I was like, what the hell, dude? I've missed something in the cave. And I'm wandering around for ages, and I can see there's a thing lying on the floor. I was like, I don't know how we get there. God damn it. And it turns out, after a good, like, another 20 minutes of exploring this cave, and a session where I had to go back and teleport out and refresh my characters because I'd used every resource just going around this cave endlessly, that it's actually the very first turn in the cave. It's just that I went... There was like 3 exits, so it was like, okay, I went this one, and the actual one that has the answer in it is the first one, and it's literally the first room. Absolutely ridiculous. So when I went out and came back in, I was like, oh, okay. And then it occurred to me, my game brain kicked in. It was like, oh, okay. I bet they're going to send us back into this cave to go to the end boss that I'd just beaten like an hour ago. So I was absolutely correct to this. I spoke to the Wyverns, and they gave me a Wyvern egg, and then the Wyverns have died. And it was like, go submerge the egg into the magical lake in the cave. I'm like, right, okay. Fought all the way back through the cave, and hilariously just threw a baby, from what I could tell, into the lake and drowned it, and then nothing happens. No dialogue, nothing. You just throw an egg in the water. I'm like, well, there it is. Okay, is something supposed to happen? I don't know. Came back out. Wyverns have gone. No one's talking to me anymore. I'm pretty sure I just drowned a baby. Okay. Okay. So what the hell do we do now? Like, what the hell do we do now? Well... if in Final Fantasy 2, if you're ever in doubt, go back to home base, the starting town that you went in, and talk to the Queen. That's what you should do. You should always do this scenario. It's important that you do it. So I went back, and sure enough, Hilda's like, right, we've got this and this and this to do. We need to go here. We need to uncover the secrets. We need to get to Mysidia. Mysidia is the place to be. Mysidia is the place to be. I'm like, okay, I found Mysidia Tower earlier on. I know where we're going. Easy game. No, it turns out for some reason, Mysidia, whatever you want to call it, is actually a huge portion of the map that has like 3 different locations in it. And the only one I couldn't find was the one I needed to find. And this is probably why we never grind. I want to be clear on this. We have a golden rule. We never grind out. If there's any content that needs grinding out, I'm not going to do it. That's what we had with FF10. It's like, yes, there's super bosses, but basically you need to unlock the entire tech tree. In order to do them, you need to be like capped HP and things like that. I was like, okay, we're not doing that. That's just going to add like 20 hours to the game of just leveling up, essentially. But because we've like... They're not very clear. And you know what? I do blame this, as more people have filled it in, is that there was no world map originally. And perhaps we wouldn't have had this issue if there wasn't a world map. Because the world map, which is in the Pixel Remaster... it shows you probably where places are. Like, if a place is circled by mountainous regions, there's probably something in the middle of it, right? That makes sense. But if you had no world map, you wouldn't know that. You'd be figuring it out yourself. Anyway, Mysidia Tower I can't get into. So I was like, well, we're in, obviously, near or around or in Mysidia itself, because this is Mysidia Tower. So I went south, which is a big landmass with a circular rock formation in it. I'll check out there. Sure enough, I find Mysidia Cave that's got a doppelganger of me in it that won't let me pass. I'm like, okay. So we can't progress, so there's somewhere else. There must be another place called Methuzahla, because I found 2 places called Methuzahla, but they're not the right place. So I ended up exploring this forever. No joke, this was like 25 minutes of wandering around, and this is where I reached the point. I reached the point where I was like, we're starting to flee now, because we can die, and we can only die to confusion. That's it. And I haven't really found a way of getting out of confusion. I haven't found an item that like prevents confusion, or a ribbon or anything like that. And I think our Asuna or Basuna could clear confusion if I was to level it up, because it's a spell that needs leveling up. And as you level it up, I found I got it to level 2. I just haven't needed it because, frankly, and let's say Asuna level 1 clears poison. Antidotes cost about 3 gil. And at this point, I have more money than God. So why would I bother leveling up the spell and using mana when I can use that for like Thunder 7 or something like that? It makes no sense. So I haven't found anything that gets rid of confusion, but I imagine a certain level of Asuna will do it. So confusion is the only thing that can kill us, because once you get confused, if my characters attack themselves, they hit so goddamn hard, they just kill themselves. They just completely suicide onto the floor. So that's the only thing that can kill us. But other than that, we can't die. We're just so... Our HP is so high, and the enemies hit so weakly, we just can't die. And it comes down to efficiency of battles. And honestly, by this point, I was just getting frustrated, usually with Flans, because some of them only take damage from thunder, some only take damage from fire, some only take damage to this, and you get a mix of them, which means you're assigning different spells. So at this point, it was like, guys, I'm going to start fleeing. Not because of any other reason than we're so powerful that the encounter rate in the game is very, very high. Is that we're just kind of adding hours and hours to this gameplay for no reason other than getting slightly more powerful than we already are. So it was time to start fleeing to explore. I did find Methuzahla, the home of the mages. This was a little bit fun, actually, though. Like, again, this FF2 has clear and decisive problems that I've talked about already. But the story is good. The story is actually way better than 1 and 3. It's actually a significantly good story. It's not quite up to 4 and 6's standards of the pixelated games, but it's really good. So I was exploring it, and there was some puzzles to solve here. It was like, read our tomes. And I was like, what do we do? And it's like, okay, maybe there's a library where we have to read things. And sure enough, there was, where you can use the key terms to search things in the library, and it fills you out of information. And before that, I had found this underground statue, and just pressing buttons and trying things, it had attached the white mask to it, and something happened, but I don't know what. And it turns out this, after you read the book, which I did later, it tells you that, oh, this will uncover the, this will move the doppelganger. You put the black mask you got earlier on the doppelganger, and he'll get out the way, and then you can explore this cave. I was like, that's really cool. And this will get you the entry into Methuzahla Tower, which is where we're going to get Ultima Spell. Perfect. So did that cave. Cool. No problems there. Obviously smashed everything to pieces. And then came out. I was like, right, now we can go to Methuzahla Tower. And upon approaching there, very awesome. Got swallowed by Leviathan. Leviathan is obviously the big main baddie of the early days. Obviously long way from Alexander yet. But it was cool. We were inside Leviathan, and I was like, we can't fight Leviathan because we're in Leviathan. We're in his guts. But in here, you find people who've been trapped there for many years. And the crystal rod, which is the magical thing to open Methuzahla Tower, turns out to be like very commonplace. Like these mages need to visit a lot. And there's a mage down there who's like, yeah, dude, everybody here has a crystal rod. It's the only way you can get in. Look, here's mine. It's like, okay, this isn't a special thing. It's like, this is a key. And we all had keys. It's no big deal. But here we do find a dragoon, Ricard. We have met the Estinian of the game. Ricard is down here, and he joins our party. He's our new member of the party. And he's not super underleveled, which was great. He even can hit things. This is amazing. Usually when the party members join us, they can't even hit a goddamn thing. But Ricard has joined us, which is phenomenal. Fighting through there, we do manage to get outside of Leviathan, because obviously the enemies that are blocking the exit don't really put up a match. And then we got out of there and start making our way back. But it turns out, in a twist of fate, as we then tackled Methuzahla Tower. Methuzahla Tower was fine, but we got Ultima Spell. It's, again, starting at level 0. It does less damage. We got Flare and we got Ultima. And they do magnitudes less damage than Fire 4, Fire 7 or whatever we've got at this point, because we've leveled those up. Which is really weird that they made this choice. Like, the whole game is about getting Ultima. And you get Ultima, but it doesn't do any damage. It's terrible. It's absolutely awful. And the only way of making it work is to just grind it out. So at the moment, I have 3 of the top Final Fantasy spells. I have Holy, I have Flare, and I have Ultimate, and I'm not going to use any of them. I did for about 10 minutes. I was like, guys, I'm not doing this. Like, it's just a waste of time. Like, it makes more sense for me to continue using Fire, Blizzard, and Thunder, because they're so powerful right now, and getting them even more powerful just makes more sense than grinding out a spell from level 0. So I'm just not doing it. It's a shame. As we come out, though, a few things going on. I might get the order of events here a little wrong, but because we did a lot this day. I actually thought we were going to finish the game. But not only have an attack to retake Flynn has taken place, so we've retaken Flynn from the beginning, and the Hilda is back on the throne. But as we come out of Leviathan, all the cities that we started with in the game have been destroyed. They've been wiped out. And we find out that a living cyclone that is housing the Emperor has spawned and is just eradicating all the cities. They're all destroyed. It's really cool, actually. Coming out into just like... It's not as dramatic as a world change of, say, going to the world of ruin. But, like, it's nice that they still on that theme of, like, the world's changing. And it's a living, breathing ecosystem. I love this. This is great. And now it's time to fight the Wyvern. To fight the Cyclone. And how should we do that? Is we get told, once we find out Hilda is like a doppelganger and we get the real one, is that we're going to fly a Wyvern into the Cyclone. And this goes back to the egg that we put in the lake earlier. And we summon it via the mirror. I'd actually done this earlier on. Is held dependent against the mirror and saw a picture of the egg. This time the egg hatches, though, and the Wyvern comes and gets us. And there's a weird cutscene where Ricard, as a Dragoon, can fly the Wyvern, but he's, like, flying away from the Cyclone, but it's indicating that he's going. And he just goes. Like, he just flies to the Cyclone. We end up going there as well. And eventually we're going to showdown with the Emperor, which I assumed was where we were going to fight Chadley finally, and then fight the Emperor. The Emperor fight is, obviously, at this point, you got the theme, is insanely easy. Clap the Emperor's cheeks in, like, 2 or 3 hits. And then it was going to like a Star Wars-esque finale where we're celebrating. And then as all that is happening, and we're all getting awarded, and you've brought peace, and the light has returned, the darkness has been beaten back, a guard runs in and just like, Chadley is now the new Emperor. I was like, oh God, they're still going with Chadley. Oh my God, they're still doing Chadley. And then the guard dies. And it's like, we must attack Palmacia Tower and defeat Chadley. And it's like, okay, we've got 1 more mission to go. We need to resolve the storyline with Chadley, who's Zeppela's brother in this one. And now we must find a way in. Maybe Paul the Burglar knows, because Paul the Burglar is the linchpin to the entire Final Fantasy II operation. The linchpin. Paul the Burglar has all the information you ever need to win in Final Fantasy II. He is there. If you get captured, he just turns up and rescues you. When you go into a cave, he's the one looking after all the people who've been enslaved. And now he knows how to get into Palmacia Tower. You got to go and see Paul. But before that, we get to see Sid again, finally, who is... it gives us his airship and dies. Another person dies. If I go through the list, I think it's like 5 or 6 named main characters, not just side content characters, who die in Final Fantasy II. It's a bloodbath of named characters. I'm like, another one's dead? Jesus Christ, man, they're murdering them all. But Paul the hero informs us that we can... He got into Palmacia Tower to burgle it with a kite. He attached himself to a kite and landed inside the Palmacia Tower to burgle it. So they're obviously saying you can fly into it with the airship. But the reasoning they came up with is that he once burgled it by strapping himself to a kite and landing on a tower that's on top of mountains. From what I can tell from the world map, it's a tower up on mountains, like a castle. So, okay, cheers, Paul. You know, you're a good lad, Paul. You're a really good boy, Paul. You're a good top man. Top man. And it was time for the final showdown with Chadley. But we're not there yet. So that's where I got to in the story. And I assume we've not got long left. Because obviously the Emperor is dead. We've defeated the darkness. And now we've got to resolve things with Chadley. But knowing Final Fantasy, there's probably some twist where there's actually some ghoulish monster that's behind the whole thing. That is very classic for this era. Happens in Chrono Trigger. Happens in everything. It's like, and you thought I was just a man? I am not just a man. I am this thing. This monster. Which is fine. At this point, I'm constantly being asked for updates on what do I feel about FF2 because it's so notoriously hated in the community. FF2 has one of the best stories of the pixel era games. There's lots of characters that are full of whimsy, charm, and silly, and little twists and turns here, and these deaths, and the soundtrack is great. It's just plagued by just really silly gameplay choices. Really silly gameplay choices. And that's just the big bummerino of it. And I imagine if you just enjoyed, certainly as a kid, a nice lengthy game with lots of gameplay, and you could make a master of arms who can use everything. And now I've got Ultima, so I'm going to level Ultima up so it's the ultimate spell. And I'm going to do the same with Holy. I'm going to do the same with Flare. I'm going to have all these characters who can do all these different things. You're going to have an awesome time just playing around with this. But it so gets in the way of the story, to the point where even I, 11 or 12 games in, I'm like, we're just fleeing from this point. And I want to be absolutely clear on this. We've never done this in any other game. Unless it's like a mandatory flee. FF8 had a bit of this, where there's like a monster you just can't kill, and the idea is to teach you flee. Like those occasions, obviously, we did flee. But other than that, we've never fleed. And this is the first time it's happened, but it's because of the gameplay leveling system. And I don't hate it, because once you like adapt to like, oh, you should probably just start fleeing now, it runs really fast. Like you start hitting story notes. We did a lot of story today, and it was because of that change. We went through a Colosseum, we attacked a city, we cleansed multiple dungeons, we fought in Leviathan, we then beat the Emperor. We did so much story so quickly because of adding flee into the game, and sort of thinking, well, I'm not here for the idea of how powerful can Ultima get. I don't really care, because nothing lives long enough with what I have now to warrant me doing that. So that's FF2's issue in a nutshell, but we're not finished yet. I want to see how it rounds up, and I'm sure the story's going to have a really satisfying ending, because the story's been really good. So check in with that next time. My name's been Preach. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again with probably the beginning of FF13 as well. Bye, guys.